Chewy Center. 3/5 of it. Thanks for being here, guys.
Happy to be here.
So, if you can, for voice recognition, for the algorithm, if you can shout yourselves out here real quick.
I am Ben. I'm the drummer of the Chewy Center. All that good stuff.
I'm Dave. I'm the lead singer and rhythm guitar.
I'm Mike. I play guitar.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you all do.
Here it is.
And of course, Nick and Steve aren't here. Steve because he's
Nate.
Nate. Oh
Nate,
man,
Steve.
wow! I knew I was going to do that. And the worst part, I always pull this stuff up on my phone because I always switch names and especially like song names. And now I'm like recording with my phone,
Excellent.
so I'm just going to butcher every name related to your band here.
Okay. Nate, that's what you get for not being here.
Yeah, come on, Nick.
No.
All right, I'll
Nick.
just call them different end names throughout the. That doesn't sound good. All right, doesn't sound good at all.
Start again.
Incredible.
Nate listens to all the podcasts we do, so he will love it.
Oh, absolutely. Incredible.
And then of course Steve isn't here because he's a proud father.
Steve,
Dad.
not only did Steve produce the whole album and like coordinate the whole project of doing that, his wife was very pregnant towards the end of the recording, and the baby came 6 weeks early, so the album and the baby released within 24 hours of each other.
I was about to. Didn't he have his kid like? Did he have the kid the day of like when your album release was?
I resent that the baby was not born the day the album came out.
Yeah,
He was
it was
technically born the day before.
Day before.
Oh dang! That's insane.
So like we had our album release show scheduled for May 4th, and then like at the beginning of that week, like there was some stuff going on, so we had a band meeting about it, and we just told him like, yeah, dude, whatever works, like we can reschedule a show. But
and it's cool that like,
oh my god, my cat just knocked over a drink onto my wife.
And drop kicked her.
And I almost knocked over my wife.
we didn't get any of it on camera.
Yeah, no, it's all behind.
That was completely the cat's fault. I'm so sorry.
Sometimes I wonder whether cats or dogs are like more destructive, and it's like I still don't know.
I think they do it for different reasons. Like, cats do it for fun.
That's true.
Dogs do it because they're having fun.
He's never done that ever in 5 years. He chose today to start. Hi, folks. We're at Chewy Center.
All right, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
That's Mrs. Dave.
This is the chaos that I'm here for. All right.
Everything's fine until
Mike,
they
you're a
record.
gentleman. Thank you.
I'm gonna keep like so much of this in the final.
Keep like so much. For fuck's sake.
Absolutely.
Fucking Jerry. You asshole.
By the way, what is like the metric for swearing here?
Oh.
We did not ask this before.
You think I do like ad reads?
Yeah, okay,
or, like,
fair enough, fair enough.
Honey isn't gonna sponsor me if I have been thinking about just doing like random ad reads, completely unsponsored.
Oh, that would
like
be so
completely.
I don't say that until like the very end of the entire podcast. We have no sponsors. That was all.
Are you guys into Tim and Eric at all? The comedy. So Tim has a podcast that he's been doing for like at least a decade called On Cinema at the Cinema, where it's like a film podcast, but like literally like 2 minutes of it is film, and then the rest of it is just these like horrific life stories that he tells.
Oh dear
But
God.
anyways, they like started it back up. And like randomly, like mid-sentence, the podcast just cuts to like these Carrabba's ads that are like twice the volume of the podcast. And like it's definitely not like sponsored or like they're like old ads or whatever, but you're just like listening and they're like talking about some movie or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're just getting like blasted with a Carrabba's ad.
That's incredible.
And I'm like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Love that.
So in answer to the question, yeah, you can fucking swear on
Excellent.
here. You can say some damn words.
We can say
on here.
heckin' and dang.
Gee golly, this podcast is swell.
I'll even throw in a heck or two.
That's pretty wild.
Now that Jerry has
Yeah, officially caused
inaugurated
chaos.
the podcast.
Right.
He felt the need to make an appearance.
He not only, for the folks at home, he not only knocked over the drink, he launched it onto my wife's shoulder to run away.
Yeah.
Smacked me in the face with his body.
He literally drop kicked her.
Full-on body slam.
It was pretty cool. I saw the whole thing.
He'll be punched accordingly.
Man, I don't even know now. Fuck it, let's talk about the album.
Yeah.
So, Janet Flight. Okay, first of all, the name. What's the backstory? I'm really interested.
Most of our like lyrical themes and whatnot start with our bass player Nate.
Nick, for those uninitiated.
Nick Vagacy. He until recently he still works nights, but during his job like he'll just kind of be pondering things. He's a deep thinker, and he'll just like send me like these one-line thoughts or these really like interesting, clever philosophical things, or just something that was just sitting on his mind. And over the last few years, like we've kind of made a system that when he does that, we keep a huge log of just like everything Nate said.
Oh, that's awesome.
And whenever we don't know what to write or sing about, we go there for a starting point.
That's awesome.
For 9 out of 10 times, that's kind of how we start that stuff.
Because you're picking from this like giant list of
and it's
like,
all great. And he had this one thing where he was like, I just learned what a Janet flight was. And Janet flights are an air traffic control designation for just another non-existent terminal, or it's like joint something, but it's basically a plane that takes people to and from work at Area 51 or restricted sites in the Southwest. Like it's a white plane with a red stripe on it, and it's a government flight, but like the top brass generals go on it, but also like the janitors and like payroll and like everyone who works. So the idea of like all these people like who work at a secret government site, like, hey Bob, like catch the game, like getting on the secret government plane, like that image just kind of stuck with me.
Oh, that's awesome.
But then like I was kind of thinking about just like this plane has like one route back and forth, and it's just, you know, you could think of all the implications of like who travels on that plane and like what they do, but plane itself and the pilot is just going back and forth, this small little process inside the big network of all of it. And that kind of got me thinking about like times in life where I felt like I was just like a process going back and forth for something much bigger that I had no control over.
Oh yeah.
And then we were starting to write these songs, and when we were trying to think of the album, like we had a conversation just kind of about some ideas with that, and connecting it back to Janet Flight, which we had a song that was kind of going off of that, which was the first song on the record.
Title track.
And that kind of just became the lens that we put everything through. And Janet Flight on the album kind of presents the thesis, and then every song kind of like there's like a process for like why each song is where it is. So that's kind of where we got the name.
That's cool.
And as far as like if like the album art itself, I thought it'd be cool if we had like a really classic feel for it, like the 70s, 80s prog AOR, like Asia, Yes, Toto, like that kind of prolific look. And we had this artist named Larcy Mae Freeman, and we worked with her like within like a week before the album came out because our other artist fell through.
Oh dang!
And she came in clutch.
She was a friend of a friend who just found out that we were looking for someone. She's like, I'll do it, and she's never done anything like that before. And in 4 days, she did that. And
that's wild.
And it's like I cried. It was fucking perfect.
And it is, to your point, like I think you and I talked the first time you came on here about how like you guys have gotten lumped in with like jam bands a lot. That's been like the live circuit that you've hit a lot, even though calling you guys a jam band is kind of like not a great descriptor, you know? Like
it's not perfect.
It like maybe like I can see the associations with a band like Fish, I guess, because Fish like starts to get a little bit in like the prog territory at times, but really like you guys are way closer to, like you said, like those album oriented bands like Boston or Kansas or something like that.
I think that's where we drew a lot of influence. I know like when you joined the band and we you and I were meeting and playing, and we're like, well, who are your influences? You named like Lindsey Buckingham and like like these 70s greats, the Heart, like a lot of what they do, Santana. It's like that all kind of comes in, and we still have like our roots in heavy music with Ben and Nate. So
you can definitely hear that with like again, I'm gonna butcher all of your song names, not having the list on, but 2 for 1 Special.
Yeah.
That was definitely like the heaviest moment where I was like, oh yeah, you can hear those roots of like, and it's not heavy in the sense of like there's randomly like a death metal track in the middle of it, but like heavy in the sense of like, sometimes Rush got heavy or like, something like that.
One of our friends said the album reminded him of Rush, and I'm like, you don't know how much of a compliment.
Yeah, no kidding though.
We're not nearly anything what Rush is, but if you thought about that makes us very happy.
Huge.
Well, like, I don't want to turn this into a hot takes segment here, but the thing with Rush is like the
hot take number 1.
Here we go. Neil Peart, bad drummer. No, no. I had that thought where I was like, a lot of the song structures really remind me of Rush, where it's like it's really catchy. It's definitely like centered around like a strong melody, but then it's not afraid to have like a long instrumental section or whatever. But the big difference I noticed was like sometimes Rush is a little like mathy is the way I'd say it. Like they're kind of like chopping sections together, whereas your songs tend to be very like smooth and groovy, and I guess kind of like the first couple Rush albums.
I think we'd still like to be like Rush when we grow up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, not bad, but no, I mean, like, I think that's where we get a lot of the like, to your point, like, where like I guess kind of like the jam part comes in. Like, we do have these like we'll have like a song, right? And then, but like if you chop the song in half, split it apart, and then right in the middle you have this like 2 to 3 minute instrumental like area, like, so it's kind of like this weird mix between like we do keep making the joke that we've gotten proggy with this one, but first of all, true, but second of all, I don't know, it's like a weird culmination of just a lot of different like musical taste, backgrounds, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like you don't want to define it too hard, like especially when you're writing. You don't want to be like,
if we could, because not a chance.
But that's a good point too. And like when the band started, it was just me, Nate, aka Nick, and Ben. And we had played together in high school, and we came back together, and we were kind of like trying to just write songs and figure out what kind of band we wanted to be. And like we wrote a couple songs from like, where will this fit, and then find out I don't want to go through like our whole history, but like we just kind of like that was our foothold in a little bit with the jam world, and that was a lot of our influences were like Humphreys McGee, which is the proggy jam bands like that, and then over time adding Steve and then Mike, and I think we just over time became more honest with each other and our influences and leaned into that, and now it's like we still play a lot in that world, and like we have a lot of friends and fans and fellow band friends in that world, but I think this time it feels like we're more comfortable being like, we're not that. And
a little bit different.
Like
we've always talked about like, and again, kind of as a joke, like we're like the non-jam band.
Yeah.
And that does feel like we kind of like took a lean into that a little bit this time. We still love all of that and whatnot, but we kind of have like on the line of like what's jam and what's not. It's a thin line, but we ride it hard.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I've compared you guys to the Doobie Brothers before.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I've compared you to Boston before.
Thanks,
where it's like, I wouldn't call either of those bands a jam band, but man, is there a lot of like jam influence
in that
there.
era, they all knew how to jam.
That's true.
Like,
yeah.
Even if you weren't the Dead, they knew how to just like go on these trails or like play a lot of songs straight up, but they're like, okay, right here we're going to go into 10 minutes of something.
Yeah, it's true.
It used to be just kind of a standard thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and so it's cool that you guys lean into, because honestly, I don't hear that many bands doing that now, where they're writing kind of like the specificity of that line. I don't know, the jam, I don't know, I've heard a lot of Grateful Dead clones, I feel like everyone has something unique in them, kind of like you were saying, like you all have your own influences. They're never going to be exactly the same. And if you can figure out how to bring those together, you can create something really unique. Whereas if you like only say, well, we all like fish, so let's sound like fish, like you're just going to sound like a bad version of fish, basically. Like, no offense. Or maybe you'll sound like a decent version of fish, but you'll never, like, people will just hear it and they'll be like, yeah, I wish I were listening to fish right now, you know? So it's the honesty that you pointed out, I think, is really important. And it allows you to develop. Like, I think I've told all of you guys before, but like every song I've heard from the Chewy Center, now like albums, like I like them more in chronological order. It's like the early stuff is the stuff that I'm like least into, and I hopefully that's like a compliment.
That is okay.
We've
okay.
had conversations like, do we take the first record off Spotify?
Which I don't agree with that either, but
that was ultimately what we decided on.
Yeah.
But like, it's still sometimes it's just like,
there's that
Man,
thought.
it's tempting.
I don't know, like the tough thing is like you do want to be more excited about your more recent stuff, right? Like you don't want to put out an album and then be like, yeah, but I preferred the like you want your newest one to be like the best one. But you never know who's gonna like go back and listen and be like,
yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's cool what they did here.
But what I do like about it is you can see from like literally like point A to point B. You can see a definitive difference every single time in terms of quality, ingenuity within the songs, songwriting in general.
We were more prepared.
More preparedness.
That's fair.
Like there's a lot, like, so you can see like almost the progression of we had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah.
To we're kind of sort of getting it now.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I for that fact I do like that that's there.
One of the things that really stood out to me when I was listening to it on the way here was I love the production on the album. It's just like really clear.
Steve nailed it.
Yeah, you can hear each of you just like so obviously in the mix without anyone overpowering.
We love bragging on Steve's behalf, and people are like, "Where'd you record that?" I'm like, Steve did it. I didn't even do shit.
I showed up and did a thing, and then Steve made it wonderful.
That's
like I was a high maintenance singer, like recording. Steve made it work.
The drums really stood out to me. Like there's a lot of like depth to those drums. Where
that definitely your best work.
Oh. Thank you. I definitely appreciate that. But I mean, again, like, you know, when it comes to like the clarity and like, you know, everything of how it was produced, I can't take that credit. Like that was just wonderful.
It's definitely both. Like the take matters a lot. Like
that is true.
You can't put lipstick on a pig, right? Like it. But at the same time, when you have a good take, it's kind of crazy the difference that can happen between like, oh, that's a decent drum part, and like, oh wow, that sounds really good, you know.
No, that's definitely fair. And actually we were talking about this a little bit ago. Like Steve has become so like comfortable with just us, like from like the first time we recorded with him to now. We all have our separate stories of like we'll be playing, like we'll be in the middle of a take and Steve will just click, wave us down and go, you can do better. And like he'll do it like 5 times in a row if you're not getting it. Like he's just like awesome. No, like then we'll do it again.
Doing vocals is even worse.
Oh fuck!
Because like sometimes when you're recording vocals, if you hit like a weird note funny, then you only think about that for a half hour. You keep repeating it.
Oh yeah,
that's rough.
I'm too much of a baby to like record vocals. But I do them live. It's just backing vocals. But you're right. Like if I hear myself go off, it's like now that's where my head is. You know, which it sucks.
Do it again, but try not to sound like you're about to cry.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Oh shit.
He's done a really good job of coaching us and like.
Oh, for sure.
You know, it's different when your producer is a member of the band too, because like. They have skin in the game, but also you already feel supported.
That's true.
That's a big
like you can tell that like, you know, obviously he's doing it because he wants it to sound good, but he knows that we also want it to sound good. Like we're all just like it's an in it together type of thing, which is really nice.
And but
he will drag us if we
but let's be honest, he'll be like, I know because I've heard you do it better, do it better.
Yeah.
Like that's good. You need that kind of coaching.
Well, and I'm not a believer in like the perfect take or whatever. Like we could get into like pitch correction and all that stuff. I'm not really like here to like rant about any of that, but For me, it's like it's almost like a lightning in a bottle thing sometimes, where like you just want to capture a take that has like the right energy, and it's okay if it's not perfect. Like it can't like throw you off so hard that it like messes up the song. But
that was something that he did on the guitars. This was the first time that he, because like when he started recording us, we would do clean takes and like add effects after.
Yeah.
And over time we've moved away from it, and this time on the album we didn't use any programmed effects. We did everything straight from the board from the pedal board into his board, and sometimes we were using delays and stuff that we weren't able to mimic otherwise. And the problem is when you do that, you're committed.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's true.
He made a choice at the beginning of recording. He's like, whatever you guys are playing on guitar, we're committing to that.
I like that.
And it was, I don't know, I was really happy with it.
Yeah, sure.
I sometimes I don't know, the effects that you have on your guitar can really like influence the way that you play a part, So I've personally never liked adding effects afterwards unless I just hear it afterwards and I'm like, oh, I know how I could like do that or whatever. But especially with stuff like delay, like it's always influenced my playing, and so I'd rather just send it. And then if I have to redo the part, I have to redo the part. But like, come on, how long does it take to redo a guitar part? It's like 5 minutes. And
Well, give me 3 hours.
But you have you have no idea how many times like it took me to like do like one part like for like some. I'm not a guitarist obviously, but like for the drums and shit like that, like either he'll be like, yep, that was good, or that's garbage, and it's just like, all right, let's do it again. Like it could take a whole afternoon for 3 songs, and usually it does.
Steve had a lot of experience like with his own group Hamburger Lips when they were still
incredible
recording.
name.
Great
Incredible.
name.
Yeah.
And then he did I don't know if it was an album or an EP. Are you familiar with Zoe?
I don't think so.
Great metal band in Cleveland.
Right on.
He recorded their whole thing while we were recording our last EP.
Oh, right on.
So he enjoys doing it, and we're grateful that he enjoys doing it.
Makes a big difference.
And he's good
Huge.
at it, so he brought the album together, and doing that on top of about to become a dad, and
Yeah, no kidding.
like that, that's no small thing.
Well, I think that I've been talking about this a lot with people lately, where like a lot of people, it's funny, they like think that music is like a gold mine, like a potential gold mine. And I've always said, like, if you get into music with the primary objective of like making a lot of money, like you need to like hit yourself in the head with a hammer until you stop thinking that, because it's like the dumbest, like be like a lawyer or something. Like, what are you doing?
Our goal's always just been like, make the band as sustainable as possible.
I agree with that.
Like with the 5 of us, it's like make it fit into our life. Like, don't try to make our lives fit into the band. Make the band fit into our lives. So long as we all feel like we have a creative space, like it'll continue in some fashion.
And that's what I was gonna say is like, I think if you have that sort of like environment or like friendship or whatever you want to call it in your band, like you'll keep making music. Whereas, and to the point where like, I'm sure Steve didn't have as much free time when it's like, hey, I'm literally about to be a dad or whatever, but he's still going to be motivated to be creative and participate in everything, Whereas if he started treating it like a job, and it's like, well, hey, I'm not like paying my bills with this, so what am I doing? Like, I should just go home and whatever. So, like, I think as long as you can like sustain that like fire that is like the love of doing it, like you'll always do it.
Love the game for sure.
Yeah, it'll just like look different at different points in life,
For sure.
That's like the big difference that I see with people who are like parents in music is like, if you just do it because you love it, like you'll always find a way to do it. Whereas if you do it because you think you're gonna like hit it big or whatever, then you realize like how exhausting that is, and you're like, maybe I should just be a dad and not worry about that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, the production's awesome, and it's amazing that you can do it in house. Does he do everything, like mastering?
Yeah,
Literally everything.
That's incredible.
It's wild.
He has like a small spare bedroom in his house that the studio's crammed into. We did the drums here and in his basement. Yeah.
That's
wild.
because there are a lot of like engineers who I've worked with who are phenomenal, but when it comes to mastering, they're like, nope, it's a completely different thing.
He's got
like,
a weird ear for it.
We also did the barbershop quartet here.
That is true. Yeah.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
That. Oh man.
But Steve has this like thing, and he'll even say that sometimes he'll get like caught on something at just the littlest thing, and then even he'll admit after the fact that didn't do anything. But like he's got like again like ear for sound. Like I always think of like this one time, like we have this thing that we do from time to time at Nick's dad's farm called Funk on the Farm.
Yeah.
And like this past time that we did it, we realized like we're gonna have to like run sound, and for some reason we kind of like threw that on Steve last minute.
Well, we had a sound guy who had a family emergency.
That's right.
And so-
No. That's right. Yeah.
So we were like, Steve, can you run sound? And then my father-in-law used to be a sound guy and has a garage full of stuff. So he just like opened the garage door. He's like, what do you need?
Oh my
And
god.
we made it work.
So that was nice. But the thing was, like I know I felt like kind of like we kind of threw this on Steve. Like, I don't know about this. Like, I don't know how like he's gonna feel about it.
There's a kid in a candy store.
That's the thing. So like he literally like we're getting everything set up, and it gets to the point where like another band is playing, and he's got like his board right in front of him, and like you can see like the spark of tism like that he has just like listening in and like making adjustments, and he's having a good time. It's just like damn, that's amazing.
Like my wife knows how to run a board, so I was like, do you want to ask like do you want a break? Like I can see if the listen was right. He's like, no.
It's locked in, baby.
Yeah, no, it's and he's good at it. That's the other thing. He's just good at it.
Well, and I think there is maybe this isn't true like 100% of the time, but generally if you're like genuinely interested in something and you love it and you can just do it for hours, you're gonna get good at it. Like
Yeah.
it just over time because you
That
have
is
that
true.
love.
But sometimes you lose the love of it.
Right.
And I can tell like he like, I'm not trying to speak for Steve and saying that's not a lot of work to do.
Oh yeah.
But you can sometimes see like he's having a good time with it, and I really, first of all, love watching that, but second of all, it's just nice.
We had a good time writing too.
Oh, absolutely.
Writing this album was a lot of fun.
It was.
Writing to me is like the funnest part of the process.
Like Zodiac, the single was coming together right as you were starting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
And
kidding.
when we were teaching you, we were doing sessions just teaching you the material that was kind of like in process. I think we were already developing riffs for Partly Cloudy and Janet Flight at that time.
I mean, you guys had played Partly Cloudy live before I was in the band.
Yeah, we
Winchester
didn't
was.
have a formal solo for it.
Yeah.
That's true.
But so then like from that point, like we really started developing the material, and then like when we were kind of learning how to all play together. That was kind of when we decided, like, all right, we're going to do an album. That's going to be the project. And, like, every time we write, like, a lot of times it's, like, Nate or I with the beginning of an idea, and then just the other three guys just take that idea and they do something completely different or just add something that you had no idea about. Like, something that Mike does really well is, like, he finds a way to add a part, and instead of making it sound more crowded, it just sounds bigger.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like, it sounds like there's more room somehow with more people.
And that's a huge compliment for a guitarist, because a lot of guitarists, I mean, I've been guilty of this. Like, you come in and you're like, hey, we need a guitar part. And you're like, cool. And then you just play like a million notes. And you're like, yeah, this is way better now. It's like, nah.
And sometimes, like a million notes is the answer. And sometimes, like, there's a riff where it happens in Zodiac where, like, me and Steve are playing this harmonizing, like, do, 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 do. And then you have these do, 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 like these big glassy holdouts.
The best way I can describe it is because I remember one time specifically with Mike, like we were writing and working on Cedarwood, and the riff was like the dun 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 dun, and like just that. And then Mike comes in with the and we're just like, what the fuck? Like we weren't expecting that whatsoever, and it's just like,
playing.
Was that the time? Because there was a moment
stopped.
where like he did something. We're just like, don't stop. Like that's it. Like,
so I have to jump in and ask on that part specifically, and I'm not going to say what I think of because I don't want to like taint your answer at all. But like, do you know what inspired that part?
I can't say there's anything in particular. Just the general. Well, it's a 7/4 line. Maybe do something a little more proggy, a little more math rocky.
Right.
And that sort of thing with the trills in it, that's just sort of came about, but there's nothing specific.
It wasn't like you were hearing a certain part on a certain album and you were like, oh, what if I fit that in? Okay.
I really can't do that because if I'm inspired by something very specific, I'll just end up almost recreating that exact thing.
I'm guilty of that too.
So I can't really do that.
So you're basically getting at so the part that I heard was like 80s King Crimson. Like that's what I thought of was
Okay.
What's his Adrian Belew. Like
Yeah.
I really heard
That's awesome.
him
That's
in the part that you did
that's
there.
huge.
For sure.
Which is hopefully a compliment. Like, because again, like when you listen to King Crimson, they're a prog band, but it's not prog in the sense of like crazy guitar solos all the time or whatever. It's more of like the
Current.
All the 70s
Yeah.
prog masters, I prefer their 80s work.
That's interesting.
When Yes did a whole switch up.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
Like that's my favorite version of Yes, and that's not
Oh, right
Steve.
on.
Steve like 70s Yes.
Man, I like them both.
Rush has a lot of great 80s material.
Oh yeah. Some of it's not, but that's fine.
But like Asia's first 2 albums, like I
That's some of
love
my
those
favorite.
records. And like being the singer, like a lot of the songs, like a lot of my influences come through, and like the guys
That's
did a
fair.
great job of reinventing a lot of that. But like those big hooks, like I hate when like a song should have memorable parts. Like you should,
I agree.
I don't like when songs are unmemorable. Or something I'm trying to work on more is like whenever there's like a really good hook, you know, my instinct is like, let's give him as much of that hook as possible, but you
Yeah.
know, the rest of the guys do a good job being like, let's not give him quite as much. Let's give them
Yeah.
enough of what they want, but it's still enough to hook you in.
I've always been a believer in like whatever like the big like juicy hook is in your song, like you want to leave the listener wanting to hear it like one more time. They're like, I wish they'd done it one more, because then they want to go back
They'll
and
restart the
let's do
song.
it again.
yeah. The other thing I was gonna say is like with guitar, I just lost my train of thought. Guitar solos. So I've played a lot of friggin' guitar solos in my life. I promise this relates. Every like guitar solo that's considered like one of the greatest of all time, you can pretty much like hum it, you know?
Yeah.
Like even one that's considered kind of like shreddy, like, you know, people consider like the Freebird solo to be like super shreddy or whatever, but it's still like we can all sit here and be like, oh, I know how that solo goes, you know? And to me, like a memorable guitar solo is one where you get to the end of it and you're like, that guitarist is clearly great, but I can't remember any of the notes that they played. Like,
That's fair.
and I think that applies pretty much across the board. Like, I've learned that with drum parts, where it's like, you know what, like one of the greatest drum parts of all time is when the levee breaks. And it's because it's just so friggin'
nice.
memorable, right?
Like the phrase
Nice,
is more
nice.
important than the technique almost.
yeah. And
I 100% agree with that.
on the other end of it, where a very technical drummer, but someone like Neil Peart has the drum fills in Fly By Night, like that's basically like a hook in and of itself.
Yeah.
Or, I think I was listening to Kevin Parker from Tame Impala talk about Dave Grohl, and he said Dave Grohl's drum fills are basically like riffs, where he just like repeats them over
Well, that's
and
the
over
thing.
again.
I mean, like he
Yeah.
like plays guitar like drums and drums like guitar.
Yeah.
Like he is able
way
to
to put it.
fuse those so well together.
and it makes it all so much more memorable.
Actually, I think he did say something along those lines because he started as a drummer, and with a lot of his guitar riffs, he hears it in like almost like a beat form first.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
And so so I love that take. It's so good.
It's yeah. And of course, you guys do have like shreddy moments. Like I'm gonna get the song wrong, but like you had like a John Petrucci like guitar moment where I was like, oh wow, you're
It was definitely the Janet fight solo.
Nice.
That was at least one of them.
that. Yeah, I think you're right. And obviously, like 2 for 1 Special has some pretty wild stuff in it as well.
That song, like when we were writing it, we're like, do you want it everyone solo? We're all looking around like, can we do that?
Oh, when that bass solo
fuck
kicked
everyone.
in.
We're doing
Oh, the
5
bass solo.
solos.
Yeah, exactly.
When Nate/Nick kicked in with that bass part, I
Yeah.
was like, it was literally what you just said. I was like, oh, they're doing all the instruments. Like,
Absolutely.
That was fun.
So good.
But I think the key is like yeah, like you're leaning into the prog vibe, but it's not prog where like after 30 seconds you've already heard all the notes and you're like, okay, they played them all. Like, you know, I love that, like leaving more space. Like there are sections in there where it's just like you guys riding like a pretty simple groove for like, I don't know, like 30 seconds or whatever, and that'd be a really easy spot to jump in and just like, guys, what if I just started playing like like sweep arpeggios here? Like, you know,
I think we were just trying to find ways to make the songs breathe a little more.
like that's huge.
There were some times where like we had to make deliberate choices. Be like, let it breathe.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. Like,
and that works against the algorithm because like the algorithm is about like condensing. But
yeah,
we just made a choice, so we're gonna write exactly what we want to write.
Right. Like, I think what's more important than the algorithm is like not compromising your creative intent. Like, a song's not going to do well algorithmically if like it doesn't sound inspired, you know? Like, and so I don't like, I get that everyone's obsessing over the algorithm, and I will say the CD era brought on a lot of songs that are like 5 minutes long that should be 3 minutes long, but they said like, well, we have 63 minutes to fill, so let's repeat the chorus 19 times. Like, I was just doing karaoke last night and someone did a Creed song, and like I both ironically and unironically really enjoy Creed, but like the song was like 5 minutes long. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, and it didn't go anywhere. It was just like you get to the peak and then it like gets quiet and then it gets loud and then it gets quiet and it gets loud, and it's like, all right, we kind of already did this, you know.
You still didn't tell us what you said.
What did I this is definitely not monetizable. I'm glad I don't do ads or anything. There's a group called Da Vinci's Notebook that made a classic barbershop quartet song, which maybe is a good lead-in.
Oh my god.
It's called Enormous Penis. And the subject matter is roughly what you would expect.
You didn't go for Don't Stop Believing.
No.
That would have been a crowd pleaser.
No crowd pleasers. No, I went with the obscure one there.
Absolutely.
That's actually a great tie-in, though. Obviously, most of the album is like you said, album-oriented rock. Sometimes it's prog. Partly cloudy. I wouldn't really put in the prog sphere.
That was probably the jammiest song.
Yeah.
It's funny because that's your song.
Yeah, and you're the lead jammy person here. That is true.
When I was listening to it, I think I listened to the album twice all the way through, and both times I was like, this feels like the song that connects back to what you guys were doing with like something like I don't know, like the EP that you guys did. And
I think you actually did say that before, like the Partly Cloudy in itself like feels more like like the Chewy Center, like previously, like in like the EP and whatnot. It's kind of like that tie-in to some of our older stuff, and
that's what I think is cool, is like you guys talked about like artistic development and all that stuff, which I think is really important. I think it's a huge bummer when I'm really excited to like hear a band's new album and then it sounds exactly like the album they put out before. I'm like, but at the same time, like it doesn't sound like I don't know, that you guys like completely derailed and like went in an entire, like there's still that identity there.
Well, that song was kind of different how it came about, because like Ben usually is not the genesis of like when we start a new song. He'll optimize something that's brought in, but that one particularly, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, for sure. Like that one specifically was something that I wanted to. The whole story about that is actually derived from a story that I heard from my father, who passed away in 2016.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And no, that's all good. But he would always tell these like stories of like things that like he would do, things that he and his brother would do, and they were always they were always these like super funny, because like there were certain things that like he was just never prepared for any of these trips that they ever do, and they back when they were younger, him and his brother basically shared a car that was like this, like supposed to be navy blue type of, or no, not even navy blue, like a lighter blue, like
70s ash color, like just
exactly
all the 70s cars were
exactly, and but it had this blue paint, but like it was so old, like that the paint is chipping away, like exposing like the gray underneath, and they called it partly cloudy because it looked like a sky, like, about to storm. And so again, stories of these road trips that they would take, these camping trips. They're not outdoorsmen by any stretch of the imagination. Like, they bought a raft from, like, God knows where. They were like, all right, let's go down the river. This is all good. What are these cushions for? We don't need them. And so they don't put them in. And all of a sudden, like, they sink below water level inside the raft. And they're just like, we can't see shit. Like, so we're just like cruising down the river. Like, so they had all these like crazy stories of like how nothing ever worked out.
Yeah.
But they had a good time. And like in the best ways possible. So, the song is, are you kidding?
I'm funny.
They're banning.
He is not a scratching post. But like the song is basically all about, obviously paying homage to him, my father, but as well, things aren't always as they plan, but like, we're just out here, we're just doing it, having a good time. And in the end, we'll have all these great stories to tell.
That's awesome.
And,
yeah.
And when you brought up that, because Ben brought up at practice, like, I want to write a song about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him to write an essay. It doesn't have to be sentences, doesn't have to rhyme. Just write everything that you feel about this. And then he did that over a couple weeks. And then I took that and tried to source all the lyrics from it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Knowing that, knowing it was, related to his dad and stories of his dad's youth. And it kind of, Partly Cloudy being the name of the car was the name of the song. But it became kind of a motif throughout the record. I called the car Baby Blue in the first verse, and that comes later in Cedarwood.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right on.
It's like these little tie-ins. But it fit perfectly as song number 2.
Yeah.
Because, like, the first song, Janet Flight, is asking the thesis. It's like, do you ever feel like you're the last one in the know when you should have been first? It's your life, but no one informed you. Shouldn't your life be something you sit at the wheel for? And then the second song is about people sitting at the wheel of their life.
Oh, that's awesome.
And there's my favorite lyric in that song is, someday we'll have sons to tell our stories too about you and me and Baby Blue.
Oh.
So it's like this beautiful view of like, oh, look at that. And then it's kind of a perfect jumping off point for everything else.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm just going to go full...
Do it.
Full, what is it, Jerry Maguire.
Let's hear it, baby.
Like... So it starts with Janet Flight and it goes into Partly Cloudy. It's like, these are people who like sat at the wheel and like lived their life and took the risks and, took all the benefits. So it's like, that's a great idea. I want to do that. And then it looks at the world and it's 2-for-1 special. And it's like, I'm trying to sell you a TV you don't need. And it's the news trying to make you mad at your neighbors.
Yeah.
And like all this stuff. It's like, what? The world sucks. And then at the end of it, it says like, when the world's getting you down, you don't have to be the product they're selling.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not going to be easy to find that freedom and how you feel. And then the song with the barbershop, the 4 guys, the next thing, it's like, okay, well, what do I want to do with life? And the idea is like turning the radio dial, trying to pick what you want to be.
Yeah. And there's like a televangelist and there's like a whatever.
Ben was the televangelist, by the way.
Oh, that's awesome.
And like, trying to figure out what path you want to go down, and then it lands on the Barbershop Quartet singing Zodiac by the Stadium Diorama, which becomes the next song, kind of saying like, do you want to trust like essentially like the Zodiac or like your horoscope? Like, do you want to be told what you are meant to do, or do you want to figure it out for yourself? And like the balance of life, trying to figure that out.
That's definitely the song I like. The lyrics have sunk in the most for me just because you've had it out the longest, and it's always reminded me of the scene in The Matrix where they talk about fate and they're like,
it's kind of about fate, or like what do you put your stock in, like fate or yourself, or and that's something that like for me, like when I wrote that song, my mom has this my mom's like is a typical love you, Mom, Italian Catholic mother. They're very into, Italian Catholicism, but they're also kind of into these horoscopes, and like that's a thing. And like my family would talk about that stuff growing up, and my mom had this birthday book where she, people would bring it out, and then one of my aunts would be like, who was on your birthday? Gary Cooper. It means you're a stinker, or something. It would tell you everything about what you're supposed to be, and I hated that idea or just how I focused on it.
Yeah.
And that book would sit on the bookshelf next to a diorama of Cleveland Browns Stadium, which is why the Zodiac by the stadium diorama.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's then after that, it goes into Cedarwood, which is a song about our first out-of-state show, very far away at a big festival. It was our biggest booking, and I'm pretty sure I fibbed to get us on it, that we were bigger than we were.
Incredible line.
And I think the promoter knew that and took mercy.
That's fair. I think everyone does it to some extent.
It was the 6-hour drive to northern Michigan to play this festival. It's the song is just about okay, this is the first time we're really taking a risk with this thing and putting ourselves out there, and we could eat shit.
Yeah. And there's a real if you play a bad gig in Cleveland, you're out the gas money for each of you get, whereas that's man, you gotta find lodging, and it's interesting.
So that song is kind of just about that whole thing. It's we're just trying to make some waves, hoping this one will do as we drive past the Cedars for a journey long overdue. Kind of just singing about the anticipation getting there.
Yeah.
And then the next song, Habba Dabba, is another story about a gig, but it's a gig that went completely wrong. And it happened a year or so later, maybe a year and a half later. We had this show at a venue in Kent, but we didn't know it was. We didn't look it up, but it was during spring break, and also there was a windstorm and the power got knocked out. We had to run sound, and we're setting up the stage in the dark, and the other bands show up, and we're all just sitting there for 3 hours because the owner's it might still happen.
Oh my god!
And that 2.5 hours of us all sitting in that room waiting. He's all right, guys, you've been good. I'm gonna give everyone a beer on the house, but domestics only. Yeah.
Oh my god!
But then after that, we're just, when we finally pack up, we go back to Steve's house, and we're gonna go to the bar at the corner of Steve's street, and we're just gonna tie one off and have fun. We didn't even make it to that bar, but we just stayed at Steve's house with a case of beer and just ended up crying, laughing until 1 a.m. because we were how nice was it that we've had so many cool experiences. We didn't need this to work out to feel good about ourselves.
That's a cool perspective.
And so it was kind of the anticipation, hoping that something works out, and then the next song about something won't work out, but you'll be okay.
I've been talking about that a lot, especially gigs specifically, but you can kind of broaden it with music in general. I tell people a lot, if someone who hasn't played a gig and they're afraid of playing to an empty room or something, I'm if you're afraid of that, then just don't get into live music, because it's gonna happen.
Totally play to an empty room if that worked out.
100%.
Yeah.
When this was it was like a movie. The last thing we got in the car, slammed the trunk shut, all the power in Kent comes back.
Oh my god.
Literally, no kidding.
And then the owner, him and I are just having a game of chicken, staring at each other, and I'm don't do it.
Yeah.
And then after a few seconds, he's well, how long would it take you to... I was
we're out.
We're out.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Which there's no one there. Because it's
it was literally the bands were left and a couple random friends.
I just had to cancel a gig in January because the roads were awful, and we were debating it because I hate canceling gigs, especially last minute. But it's if the bands are afraid to drive, why do you think there's going to be anyone there? So the entire city of Kent's out of power. The power comes back on, and everyone's just going to be all right, time to
let's go party.
Yeah,
right. It was 9:30 at night.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then the last song is just about after you go have all those experiences, the first Janet Flight was asking do you ever feel the last one in the know, and the whole album's about going out there and finding out for yourself. And then the last song of the record is now I'm the first one in the know, and all I know is that I know nothing.
Oh, that's awesome.
The first lyric of the first song and the last lyric of the last song kind of bookend on that.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I don't know, that we really worked hard on making everything fit where it fits, and the subject matter kind of loosely related. Like it's not like the story of like, you know, somebody going through, like you can really clearly mark it. It's kind of more of like a story of like emotions and feelings. But that was, everybody like made, the five of us were just a coalition on making that the idea and the vibe and the theme of the album, and knowing that it wouldn't really be a jam band record and not worrying about that.
Yeah.
I don't know, it was cool. Everybody brought their A game and really worked hard on their parts, and the themes lined up. Like, this is, for me personally at least, the best thing I've ever done artistically in my life.
Yeah.
And I got to share it with these guys and Steve and Nate, and like that's the coolest thing about it.
That it's something really cool that I know I've talked to you guys about before, but like you guys really seem to channel your creativity in a fairly like democratic way via the Chewy Center. Like most bands, when you talk to the individual, like once you start learning about like the network of bands, it's like there are always like 2 side projects per member, so there's like just this giant thing. And you guys, you're one of the only examples I know of, like, there just aren't really a lot of side projects or whatever. Y'all are just, like, hitting the Chewy Center hard, and I think there's a huge benefit to that. I don't think it works for everyone. I think you guys do have, like, a pretty special thing going where you all just, like, are super respectful of each other and are able to... I don't even want to use the word like compromise. Like it's more like you all are just able to run after the same goal and like put your ego aside and everything. It's just not common with musicians. Like it doesn't happen very often.
We had to learn that. Like we're not like especially like me, Nate, and Ben. Like we're not who we were when we started. And like you know, Ben and I had some things early on in the band that like we had to work through and like made us not just better bandmates but better friends and hopefully better people. And like I don't know, I think everybody holds each other accountable just on a personal level to be like the best version of you. I'd say that.
No, I 100% agree with that. And I think that it also really helps with, now this could also be one of those things that is a detriment to some other situations, but like first and foremost, we're all like really good friends. We all get together, have like just a good time, like just hanging out with each other. Like we get together once a week and it's just like, you know, it's the bros hanging out, right? And we always we all have this same passion for music. We're able to have fun with it, and again, you know, in some situations, you know, being a friend and, you know, something that I mean, what would you call it, that intimate as like being in a band could hurt the friendship, but with us we found a way to make it stronger.
It was like it's work, you know, it's not it's not easy, but
it's a marriage between 5 people.
Literally.
But it's also gotten easier as time's gone on, because I think we just
absolutely
we all grew and we helped each other grow. And
and you figure like you guys knew each other in high school. Like I would hope that you would all also just be like better people, like, you know, 10 years later or whatever. Doesn't happen all the time, but you know, you'd hope that you would mature. And like I think about the fights that I would have creatively when I was in high school compared to now, and it's just like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like why would you start a fight about that, you know? Like, but that's what splits up bands for the most part, is like just not being able to agree and not being willing to accept like a common vision, and just like it causes this awful thing.
And that's not like a deliberate thing where it's like everybody can only be in Chewy. It's like there was a while where Steve was also doing Hamburger Lips.
There's no non-compete that you guys signed for the Chewy Center.
But just, I don't know, but at least at this moment in time, it's like this is what everybody wants.
And that's certainly what I was trying to imply, is like it, like I'm sure if one of you were like, hey, I want to do this like electronic thing that doesn't really fit in with Chewy Center or whatever, like I can't imagine the rest of you being like, no, fuck that, like you gotta like stick with it. Sorry. You knew the deal.
I think the reaction would more be like, that doesn't fit. Bet. Like we're gonna fit. That's a good point.
That's literally what I was about to say, is I hear that in your music where there's a part that you manage to fit in there that isn't textbook part of whatever like the song's genre is or whatever, but that makes for more interesting music, is when you're willing to take a chance on something like that. Instead of, again, being like, well, Fish never did it, so we can't. Like, that's such a lame way of viewing music.
Well, Fish always says yes and. That's the beauty.
That's fair. That's fair, yeah.
When I saw Fish for the first time at Blossom, it was towards the end of the second set, and they're playing, I think it was Bathtub Gin, and Trey was trying to get them to do something really weird, like off meter, and like it was very avant-garde, and like they were in this weird pocket for like 10 minutes that didn't really fit, and you could tell Trey was trying to signal them, and no one was getting it, and then and the crowd was kind of just with them, like, all right,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
eventually Trey gave up and just told him to go back into the end of the song, and the whole crowd of Blossom just went, oh, like they knew, and then somebody just yells, "That's why they're the best. They went for it still."
Incredible.
Well, and what I've had to remind myself is if you take a chance on something and it doesn't work, like, it's not like you're going to get, like, death threats or whatever. It's, like, literally the worst case scenario is that no one really listens to it. Like, you know, doesn't catch the algorithm or whatever, and, like, it's fine. But to me, like, if you're doing music, like, original music, and you're not experimenting, I'm kind of like, what's the point, you know? Like, why even do it? Why just sound exactly like someone else? So, but yeah, getting back to it, like, I think that's what's cool is, again, like, not trying to, like, make a Bible for you guys where you all of a sudden can't have side projects or whatever. It's just more what I hear is, instead of a side project, fitting it in, you know, making the idea work. And again, it just makes for more interesting music than if you had, like, the rock version of the Chewy Center, but then you had the electronic version, and then you had the hip. Like, yeah, make it all one thing. We do have these
weird moments of, like, somebody will bring something in, and everyone will go, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And then,
yeah.
like, all of a sudden, they're just like, you know, somebody will, like, stick to it, like, nah, I think this is good, and they'll be like, all right. And then, like, we'll, like, you know, figure something out, we'll be like, wait, no, this does fucking work. And, like, then, like, we'll, like, you know, build around it, and we'll be like, no, that's good.
Yeah.
Like, we can work with that. Yeah. And, like, but yeah, that happens, like, that definitely happens from time to time, where, like, it's just like, I don't think that's it.
Yeah.
And then, all of a sudden, like, you know, it starts to work, and you're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Those can sometimes be, like, the best songs or the best riffs or whatever, when you kind of have to chisel away at them. You know, it can be really rewarding by the end of it.
There were some songs on the record that just wrote themselves, and there were some that, like...
That is true.
It was rough.
What were the songs that you feel like just, like, right out of the gate were just like, oh, that's it?
I think...
Two come to mind.
Go ahead.
Like, I think we basically wrote... Like, I forget if it was you or Steve that wasn't there that day, but it was 2 for 1 in Habba Dabba. Like, we wrote within a practice.
Okay.
Habba, we had a rough time with the chorus.
Oh, okay, I guess that's fair.
Because we were trying to write a big hook chorus, and then what was the pre-chorus ended up becoming the chorus.
That makes sense.
And
yeah,
Steve and I were just like, there was probably a good 30 minutes that him and I were working it out, and everyone else just standing there waiting for us to be done. And we collectively were just like, we can't write a chorus, can we? We were like, we can't. Every other part of Habba Dabba, I agree.
No, that's fair. That's right. And actually, I think if I'm not mistaken, how that came about, like, was literally, like, we have, like, a group chat, and, like, I think, like, what was it? Like, somebody said something along the lines of, like, well, like, we already kind of sort of have a chorus with the pre-chorus, or, like, something about that came up, and we're like, wait a minute.
It was grief and acceptance. That's how we came to the chorus of Habba Dabba. I love it.
It works. It definitely works.
That's it's one of my top songs on the album, and it's cool that you guys talked about that, because one of my favorite things about it is that there's this, like, drastic shift that happens between the like, I don't know how to describe the verse, like, I don't know how to, like, correctly say it, but it is kind of like, it kind of has that feeling of, like, a jam band making prog, like,
and
I don't know.
That was Steve singing too.
Oh, I didn't know.
That was
Steve sang the verses of Habba Dabba.
Oh, no kidding.
We've been trying to, like, we do a lot, like, with our like, a lot of harmonizing. And like, he sings one of our covers that we do, and we've just been trying to find more outlets for him to be, like, singer too, instead of just backup singer.
Awesome.
So that was kind of our foray into that.
Oh man, I gotta go back and re-listen now because your voice is pretty like it's pretty unique. Like the like whatever, like the character of your voice stands out, and so I can't believe I didn't notice that. You know?
Yeah, we were. And typical Steve, like he records all his parts at the end. So like when we're recording it, putting it together, we have no idea what the final product's going to actually be because he saves all his vocals and all his key use parts until everyone else is done.
End.
That's amazing.
So he gets kind of like the final say on how it sounds.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's even worse for me because like when
He's the first to record.
I'm the first to record. I don't go off a scratch track or anything. I map out the songs like per measure.
Wait, really?
Play to a click.
Yeah.
And you're just like...
That's it.
That's... Wow.
So he doesn't hear the songs that he
I hear
records
nothing until it's
3
done.
months later.
You hear it in your head, I guess. Like, that's all you...
Yeah, like, now, like, you know, it comes with the homework of, like, knowing the song intimately, but, like, I never hear the final product until everything is said and done.
That's so funny. And in a weird way, like... You're probably altering it a little bit by that method, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, you're gonna play parts that, again, you know the song, but it's not coming through your headphones or whatever, so you might play something a little bit differently just because you're not reacting to, like, what the guitar is doing or whatever, and then that's gonna cause the rest of the band to, like, follow you, and you end up with, like, like, not drastically different, it's still the same song, but it has been...
I don't know, that's a good question. Are there ever...
Well, one of my favorite examples of like Steve just like changing the game at the end is he started doing this on the last EP we did.
Yeah.
But there are sections of the solos where you'll record something and like you and him even talk about it now, about like a harmonizing build or something.
It seems like maybe half of my solos end up being duets by the end of them. And on over half of those cases, I have asked Steve to do that.
Oh, that's awesome.
As we were recording my part.
Like
The side part where I'm not playing fast, come up with something for that.
Like the outro of 2 for 1 Special.
Dude, I still can't get over that.
There's like, when we're in that last section, they start building something and then it does this. I listened to that when I was driving home from work and I just went...
Dude, it's wild. Like, literally,
awesome.
I think my favorite part of this entire album, after all is said and done, is quite literally after the solos to the end of 2 for 1. It's not even the solos, to be completely honest. It's like right after like you and Steve just going off, and I'm just like, this is it. Like, this is amazing.
That's something that I don't think I'm ever gonna get bored of. Is like a lead guitar and a synth like harmonizing a part.
It's
like,
so good.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's just always cool. Kind of in the same sense of like if you have a metal band, it's like having 2 harmonizing guitars. Like it just always sounds good. Like I don't know. You can pretty much never go wrong.
Hashtag Avenged Sevenfold.
Avenged or like Maiden or whatever.
The record was like, this was the first time I only had 1 solo on the whole album.
I was gonna ask about that.
I had Zodiac was a single that was recorded long before. It's like that song kind of has 2 guitar solos, like mine and then Mike's, and then
right on.
This time I had mine, which was like the 3rd out of 5 in the 2 for 1 special solos. But like that was kind of nice to be like, I don't have to write a solo for every song, but also like Mike's just so much more technically proficient, and him and Steve have just a good flow together.
Yeah.
Those are some of the best moments on the record.
That's something I've really noticed comparing. I watched one of your guys' live performances, like maybe you were on like WRUW or it was something like that, but it was before you were in the band. And well, it's funny because like it's good, but it sounds incomplete is like the way I'd say it.
Yeah, that's fair.
It sounds like there's a thing missing. Now, in fairness, that's with me having the context of like, I met you guys via that gig we did when I was with the Clee Trio, and you just sounded like full, like you were saying, like the dual guitars to me can be like problematic a lot of the time because guitarists don't know how to turn their fucking amp down, and so it just becomes this like wall of guitar. But when guitarists like lock in the way that you guys do, it's better than the sum of the parts, right? And so going back and listening to the older stuff, you're like, there are just certain dynamics that aren't there yet, you know. And
I never wanted to play lead guitar. Like I
But you have
resigned myself to it.
that's what I was gonna say is that gig with Clee Trio, you had a really cool guitar solo that you played where you made your guitar sound like like a steel drum, basically.
Yeah, that was an octavizer pedal
Yeah.
that did a combination of 2 or 3 octaves, either 3 up or 3 down. Like every knob on the pedal is a different combo.
Yeah, like a Pog or something.
Yeah, so usually keep it on 1 and 2 above
Yeah.
whatever it is, and it gives it like the steel drum sound.
Yeah, those really cool like over harmonies.
Even I didn't use that pedal at all on Janet Flight. I really just kind of use it for older stuff, or if we're in an exploration, maybe.
That makes sense.
I pretty much just kept it to reverb, overdrive, and a little delay, and sometimes, a little wah or something else, but I didn't do a lot of variation this time.
Okay.
Just because I knew that he was going to have all this room to do other things, and
That's fair.
everything, it just came together. I was very happy with the overall tone and, like, my personal guitar tone on it.
That makes sense. Well, I just wanted to make it clear that, like, technical proficiency, I've talked to a lot of people about this, where, like, it matters for sure, but I don't know. Like, you guys are going to play guitar differently. You're going to think about it differently. Maybe you end up with, like, 80% or 90% of the lead guitar parts or whatever, but, like, sometimes you're going to have an idea where it's just, like, that's the thing. Like, that's the part, and it's hard to, like, script that. And it has nothing to do with technicality. It's all about just, like, sometimes you hear a thing and you're able to play it in a certain way that, like, and I say this as someone who, like, the way that I learned guitar was it was like early YouTube, and it was just like Steve Vai videos and Joe Satriani, just watching that, like, running scales like crazy. But I've come to realize that, like, yeah, sometimes people just, like, play guitar in a way that I wouldn't have thought to do it, and there's a magic to that. So I hope you have that, like, confidence of, like, if you do have a cool guitar lead part, like, go for it,
Like, it's more like I'm happy when it happens.
Yeah. But that's a good place to be in, like, either instead of, like, forcing it, which is a problem, or the flip side of being like, well, I'm not the lead guitarist. So like, no, sometimes, and again, if it's only 10% of the time, that's fine. But, like, you are going to have those moments.
We also play very differently. Like, our tones, like, our rigs are very different. It's funny because, like, we have the same amp, just solid state too.
Oh, no kidding. That's funny.
And, like, just kind of our setup philosophies and everything. And then, like, a lot of my riffs are kind of like, I think about hooks, and then, like, when I bring that forward, he adds something to, like, optimize it, or if it sounds happy, he'll bring in something that sounds a little melancholy, so now you have, like, a weaving thing.
Yeah.
That happened on Zodiac really well. It happens on a lot of the songs.
Yeah, a lot of stuff I add, it ends up being less like a riff and more like a texture.
Yeah. Which, again, when you've got two guitars, like, that's important to understand that dynamic, because otherwise it can get muddy really quickly,
That's kind of like the easiest way that I write. Like, when I joined the band and they had a bunch of songs that were complete, it's like, the puzzle is, okay, how do you find something that fits into here?
Yeah.
And for some people that would be, too constricting. Fight nice.
They
sure they're fine.
do not like independent media.
Look, this podcast sucks. Wrap it up, guys.
But in that sense, it sort of helps ground me. It's like, okay, I know what we're going for. I just need to find out where is their space, where is that one missing piece. And I've kind of, even though, I was here for all these new songs, at least for, some of them have been started before I got here. But even then, it was like, okay, I'm sort of waiting for everything to kind of come together. And then I find that last bit that goes over top.
Man,
Something else that's, like, fun working with you and with Steve is that, like, you guys are engineers by day trade. So sometimes, like, you approach it as, like, a problem that needs to be solved or fixed to, like, add something that fits or optimizes it. It's kind of the way you do it in Minecraft and all. So that's a cool process from the outside to watch, because, like, me, Nate, and Ben have like our system of like generating like riffs, or like we're generally gonna move this direction, and you guys like re-chart the course in a cool way.
And that's kind of just a reality with recorded music, is that there's the whatever, like the brainstormy thing where you're just kind of like free flowing and, you know, just getting ideas out there and everything. And then there's the reality of like, okay, we gotta chop it down. Like we gotta get it into like a song or whatever, an album. And you do need both sides, because otherwise, I don't know, you're gonna have like a 20-hour long album that's just like basement recordings or whatever. And
we were just happy it ended up being legally an album.
Yeah, that is true.
That's a hard thing too, man.
We skated right past the threshold.
Yeah, no kidding. What was it, 3 minutes over, if that?
Yeah, it's like it has to be over 37 minutes, I think, and we clocked in at 40. And there are multiple songs that are 6 minutes long, so I'm like, how did we just skate by?
I have no idea.
First of all, that's a great place to be, instead of being like, oh, we have 67 minutes. Like, oh boy.
That's also fair.
Yeah.
That's also very fair.
But I also just disagree with this. When you say legally, I'm assuming you're referring to how like Spotify classifies.
If it's not a certain amount of time, they'll call it an EP.
It drives me crazy, and it's changed the way that people... so Mud Whale, our first album, it was 8 songs and like 30 something minutes. To me, that's an album.
Yeah, it's 8 songs.
Yeah, it's like to call that an EP doesn't really make sense to me. And the person we recorded with like insisted on calling it an EP, and we're like, it's not an EP.
Annoying.
Like, sorry,
I feel like the Bandcamp part of the internet, like if it's an album, they're like, oh, it's an EP. Ooh.
Which is weird too. Like I don't know. And so I've actually I love EPs, but I've kind of I've reached a point where I don't really want to put one out that like people consider an EP, because first of all, here's my biggest complaint, is that Spotify just lumps it in with singles, so it's just impossible to find EPs. Like you literally have to put like parentheses EP next to it, otherwise like. Especially like I've really adopted the waterfall strategy of releasing like 4 or 5 singles before an album, and so then if you throw an EP in there with it, like no one will ever find it, you know. But
that's another conversation we had.
Yeah.
Oh, about how to release.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
We were, because like me doing like I do like the business part of the band.
Yeah.
I was like, guys, if we do like 2 singles, like it helps the algorithm and this, and like. Gotta give credit to Steve. He brought up a good point. He's like, if we want this to be a concept album, like we have to act like it is.
That's a good, yeah. It's kind of like when they insist on playing songs from like whatever, like Pink Floyd concept albums on the radio, which I get it, but it does feel like you're missing something, you know. Mm-hmm. Like
I'm ultimately glad we did it, but like it depends who you are and what you're doing and what your mission of the work is. I
don't know. I'm kind of with you where like it makes sense for a single to be like if you write a song and it fits well with like that was impressive. Sorry, literally calling attention to you after you like expertly navigated around it.
She's the Jamie of this podcast.
She's been fact checking us this whole time.
Oh no.
Quite.
I think like there probably will come a day where you guys write a song that's just like shorter, you know, and I think that makes sense of like, okay, this fits into like the framework of when people release singles or whatever, so it makes sense to promote it in that way.
We've done singles, we've done EPs, we've done albums, like they all have their place.
Yeah,
that's what you want. But I
just don't think you should force, like you shouldn't do something just because other people are saying that you have to. Like if you like, at the end of the day, you want the decisions that have been made to be your decisions. And if you decide wrong about it, that's fine. At least you were the one who was wrong about it. Whereas if you spend all this like time and energy doing something that you don't really want to do, such as having like 4 lead singles to an album that's really a concept album, and then like nothing really comes of that, then you're just going to be kind of bitter about like, well, everyone told us to do this and then it didn't lead to anything and whatever. Like, I think it's better to do it the way that you see best for your own art.
The way that it was intended.
Yeah.
The guy holding a cigar on Instagram, like shaking his fist at you, didn't tell you to do it. Bacon bits.
To me, like, if you want to go, like, algorithm-wise, the best strategy is to release songs that are, like, a minute and a half long.
Literally 2 minutes max, and, like, pump out 100 of them.
Like, that's how a lot of popular artists are writing songs now, is they're writing them so that there's a section of the song that perfectly fits within, like, a TikTok video or an Instagram reel.
It is interesting how, like, the technology of the day, like, influences, like, how things were released, like, albums versus...
It's also a game. Like, it's the whole, like, Nicki Minaj, like, pumping out, like, literally 10 of the same songs, like, slightly remastered, but you're able to, like, upload them under the same, like, song number, I'll call it, so all of the views pile into one.
Janet Flight's slow and reverb all songs.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, it's literally, like, cheating the game. So, like, I don't like that.
I feel grateful that I can be fairly agnostic to the money side of music because I have a good day job where I also have free time. So 100%. I can just like make my music, and not everyone's in that place. Professional musicians have to make money from their music by definition.
That's the whole thing.
And so I would never give advice to them because they're living a different life than I am. But to me, it's like if you have a day job that's paying the bills. Again, I think it's just like really stupid to think that you're gonna like replace your income super easily. But like musicians want to think that like the current level of effort that they're putting into their music is somehow gonna lead to like a full-time pay thing, and it's like I don't see why you would think that. Like
it's literally like trying to make it into the NBA. Like
it is
the amount of work, the amount of like you physically working to be like as good and better as everyone else. Like it's also like a numbers game. Like some people get incredibly lucky, some people don't. Like
luck is absolutely like I'll push back a little bit and say I truly do believe that if you hustled super hard, and you were willing to accept like a period of a couple years where you're not really making money, I truly believe that most musicians could make a full-time living out of it.
No, that's fair. I'm not trying to cast a negative like umbrella over it.
No.
Something I've like noticed and learned just from like being in a band and like working with different musicians who are doing different models of that. I think if you're outside of that world, you see it as, you're either doing nothing or it's your sole income. You don't see that there's a lot of artists who have somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Where like they have a full-time job, but they get to travel a little bit. They get to play some nice festivals. Yeah. They have a little bit of internet traction. They might never quit their job, but the art can always keep itself alive.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's a lot of artists that I like that like they do that.
Yeah. And I truly believe that it's better to like focus on the things that you find like really fun and gratifying rather than the money side of it, Again, saying that as not a full-time artist, but if you are in that middle place, which I feel like a lot of us are,
And like we have friends who like there's a jam band from Ontario called Road Waves that
they were great.
They played on our first Funk on the Farm and or our second one. First one after COVID.
Correct.
But they they go on tour across Canada and like the northern part of the US, and sometimes they stay here, and for them like it is a job. Like he has a business, he has to pay them. Like there's all that stuff gets considered like every day. Like okay, how much is it going to cost to get to that city? Like what do we need next? Like that. There's a whole calculation involved in that. So like I'm grateful that we're in positions where like we can balance our lives and like still have our art and pour everything into that. But if you do the numbers for a 5-person band, like for us to all quit our jobs, what would the income have to be?
Yeah, and you start thinking about like gross revenue, like not
net.
Let's say each of you wants to make like $50,000 per year, fine, but like that is not going to be.
I mean, that alone, if you look at that, that's what 25.
That's $250.
250, sorry,
netting 250.
Right, net 250
for your take-home income.
Right, someone's got to go.
Yeah. So, do we really need 2 guitars?
We're
that's
bullshit.
But that is funny where, like, I'm seeing tours where those, like, mid-level artists who are full-time, but mid-level, like, making upper middle-class incomes, their bands are getting a lot smaller, you know? They're bringing, like, 2 people with them now, because back in the day, you toured, you know, whatever, you were, like, James Brown, and you were touring with, like, 20 people, or, like, you pretty much have to be, like, in that, like, top tier in order to be able to afford to do that.
Well, think of bands that had like horn sections in the
Right.
70s and whatnot.
Like, how are you going to pay each of those people a full-time
There are
income?
bands that are doing that, and it's respectable. But like I try to do the calculation in my head of like
I do it all the time.
like how like it's hard.
It's incredible.
Yeah, because even though you guys are like DIY, so you don't have to pay like a record label, which is an entirely different conversation, but you figure like the number in my head for a 5-piece band is like you'd have to be grossing like $1 million.
That being said, if you are watching and have a label, the Chewy Center at gmail.com.
Oh, so I don't want to keep you guys too long, but that leads to an interesting point for me, and I'll try to make this like the last thing here, but bringing up labels and kind of I'm trying to get into like the future for you guys, because don't get me wrong, I want you to like celebrate the fact that you released like a really cool, awesome album, like that. You should take time to celebrate that, but you're gonna keep going, like you're not gonna stop creating, you know. What do you think you would get out of like not signing to like Capitol Records or whatever, but like some sort of like independent label that kind of caters to what do you think you would get out of that you can't do yourselves?
I think that like if we were ever in a position where like we could have a partner in that, you know, we're really happy with our sound, how we come across that, as long as Steve feels supported that like and wants to record, like, be our producer, like, you know, that's one model to do it. It'd be nice to have help with like promotion and like helping book like that. That's the hardest stuff. Part. Yeah. Like that'd be cool if that happened one day, and maybe it will, and that's, you know, there's opportunities that we could explore with that. But you know, I think for now, like we've proven, like we've been a band almost 7 years. So just we've proven that like we can evolve and grow and expand little by little. If something comes across like that we can make that jump, that's great. But like I think we're pretty confident that we have a good flow on this creative thing, and we've also maintained good relationships with people, and you know, we'll always entertain something, and it'd be nice to have some of that help with the promotion and whatnot. But you know, I don't feel like I don't want to say like I don't feel like we're missing something. Like that would be really cool. I'm sure it would feel different.
Sure.
But we love the band we have, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and whatever happens, but I'm really happy with what we're making now, and we're all in a good place together, and right, we got some good shows planned for the second half of summer. Some festivals locally and abroad. We have our album release show that was rescheduled to August 23rd.
Winchester.
At the Winchester. And you know, from there on we'll figure out what we're gonna do from there. But yeah, I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is like we're really happy with what we have, and if there's an opportunity to grow it that works for us, we'll explore that. But you know, we're not worried about it.
Well, and I was gonna say, like, my encouragement, not just to you guys, but to like anyone, is it's really it's really easy to romanticize like working with a record label, and like they have resources that you don't have, and like, and all that's true. But like, to me, I think you can romanticize it up until the point where you have to compromise any amount of your creative like vision, you know. If
there was somebody who could help us get like some great bookings and just help us get to more ears, that'd be cool. If it worked for us, that'd be cool. Yeah. And honestly, what I keep thinking about is like, oh, I guess I could just like pay someone to do that. Like, you know, which is kind of a separate thing too. But like we have like a social media person that we work with. Oh, really? Because your guys' social media is on point, especially for like a local, like a DIY artist. We've been working on it, and just like she also just helps us kind of rally logistics for shows and whatnot. Yep. Oh, right on. She's someone we befriended in the scene, and like Her name's Haley McCracken. Shout out.
Right on.
But yeah, like, I don't know. We're happy with where we're at and just keep trucking along. And if someone bigger comes along and says like, "Hey, we want to help," we'll look at that. But I'd say it's not our biggest priority in the world.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense to me. Yeah, right on. And then, do you feel like, because I don't know, the album that you just put out, Janet Flight, like, it feels very complete to me. Like, it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot missing. But is there anything that you feel like I really want to explore, like this vibe next, or this feeling, or, you know, anything that you feel like you haven't really covered yet?
I'll go last because I'm just curious what you guys think.
Well, if I may, I mean, when it comes to a lot of our creative process, like, there are definitely things that, like, you know, I like to add in. Like, one thing, and I'm super happy, like, this is so simple, but yet I'm so happy with, I was able to fit a Latin beat into one of our songs. I got the calypso up in there, so I'm just like, all right, here we go.
Amazing.
But, like, in terms of, like, you know, broad span of, like, sound or, like, some, you know, some direction, for me, and, like, part of our creative process, it's in some way unpredictable in the best possible way. We really are good at, like, you know, the interconnectivity between, like, you know, all the different instruments and the voices that we try to give them. And, you know, every single time that we start writing a new song, I'm just like, oh. Yeah. Like, it's this moment of, like, this is different, this is good. So, like, for me personally, I like to kind of roll with the punches and see what, you know, that kind of brings. So,
right on.
I don't particularly have, like, not a vision per se, that's not what I want to say, but, like, you know, a direction.
Okay.
You know? I really do like the creative, abstract, like, you know, idea of what does come next, you know?
Right on. It's exciting. And,
it is.
And so it for you, it's less like you have a specific thing in mind, and it's more like just the enjoyment of the creative process itself.
It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, that's cool. Right
What do
on.
you think?
I would like to start exploring a little more technical stuff, you know, playing with weird modes and that kind of thing.
Oh, right on.
And, you know, like, there are opportunities for it. Like in Janet Flight, that was one where, you know, okay, the backing, the rhythm section to my solo, that was a little more hard driving, so that's where I got to do, like, August Burns Red / Periphery kind of thing, where it's like, okay, you sweep pick an arpeggio and go right into this, like, 3-octave tapping section.
Yeah.
I'd like to play around with that more, so I guess that's the challenge for me, where it's like, okay, if you want to do a certain kind of thing, you can't be the guy who wants to add something on the end of a song. You got to come up front and be, okay, I have an idea now. Let's base off of this and go forward with that. So that's something I want to look at in the future.
It's cool that you recognize that, because sometimes people are like, we need to do a song that does this, but then they don't write anything, and it's like, well, like, you're the one with the idea, like, you need to. So it's cool that I don't know, you guys have a great process. That's awesome.
I like what both of you said, and, like, me personally, like, Janet Flight's probably my favorite song on the record. I just, thematically, like, it feels mature for us. I like that vibe, and I like the vibe of the other songs, but I think, you know, Ben would kind of hit the nail on the head, where it's like, it's more important that we have a healthy process, and whatever comes out of that, we'll be honest. As long as we just continue to support each other the way we did for this set of songs.
Yeah.
You know, whatever come will, what is it? Whatever come will may.
Come as it may.
Come as it may.
Yeah.
Words.
It's May now. Yeah.
If it's honest, it's honest, and, you know, we do a good job of not trying to be any of us too headstrong. Even, like, just keep each other in check and support each other artistically. Good music will come.
That's important.
That's right on. This is a random question. Do you guys have, like, a backlog of songs? Like, do you have, like, a vault of, like, this didn't make the cut? Like,
yep, not a chance.
we like, there's a few things that we've thrown. We have something called the Lego bin.
Okay.
And
I guess that
kind of counts.
fits.
Or it's like phone recordings of, like, a riff we come up with.
Okay.
There have been times where, like, I had too much wine, and I'm just like, I'm humming something that I think will sound good, and then I go to the next day, I'm like, oh, I should try to make that a riff, and I'm like, I don't even know what's going on.
No, it's like quite literally like the building blocks for, so they're not fully constructed anythings, but
we'll go there when we need a little inspiration.
Absolutely. So I mean, so we do have that, for lack of a better term, like a dumping ground for all these creative ideas.
Like a 10-second riff or humming something.
Yep.
Like that's all it is.
Yeah.
But like as far as like whole songs that were just shelved, I think we really just tried to make every song work.
Yeah.
Like Habba Dabba for me was a good example where like we're trying to find a chorus and then it ended up not being. Like we tried to make that a thing first.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Easter was another song before it became Easter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I don't know, I think for us, I can't think of a song that we completely never just put back.
No, like, well, so I do agree with that for the most part. There are evolutions of songs that we did right before, didn't really match what we were either looking for, or the sound, like whatever it may be, right?
Sure.
It didn't meet the mark. And we'll be writing something new and be like, hey, wait, this riff from this song, like, is perfect for this. With like little tweaks we could throw right in. So like we do have some older songs that kind of have become, just like material that we just like don't touch. But as well, we integrate some of those like better parts.
As far as songs that like we were trying to develop and then just like decided not to record.
Those, no.
Yeah, I can't think of any.
No, I guess not.
And I think that's cool because it's like you were stoked on an idea that led to you writing the song. So sometimes it just happens where like you end up writing more songs than you realized you had, and so you say, well, let's just record them all and then we'll have the extras or whatever. But in your guys' case, it's more like, no, these are the ideas we're excited about. We're going to make them work because we know we're excited about them.
I'd say there were visions that got shelved. Where like I think just being like the singer, I think of a lot of things where like the drums come last for me. So like I think of the song in the context of like 4 on the Floor.
Oh sure.
And then Ben will do something different with it. I'm like, that's not what I wanted. And sometimes it becomes something much better and changes the whole thing. Like, oh, okay, so we went down that path and we found this song and that's cool. And there have been some songs where I'm like, Ben, this one part really has to be 4 on the floor.
Yeah.
And we've done a good job of kind of figuring out like when is that appropriate, when is it not.
Yeah.
So
and that's just like the respect for each other of like you just gotta feel it out between the members. And
there was a version of Partly Cloudy that I kind of wanted to pursue a doo-wop backing vocal.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and that just it never got picked. Like
speaking of alternative versions of songs, we need to hear that now.
And what was funny is when I pitched it, Steve was like, "That's Elton John." Shit. It was exactly the
wild.
Dang.
What song was it? But it was an Elton John song for
That's
so
good.
Yeah.
Well, but
it's a good idea.
So what I'll say, like, if I may, like, to that, what I'll say is, so, like, no, we do not have a backlog of songs or anything like that, and what we did end up for the album is, like, what Dave said, like, we made it work, but, like, it was also, like, something that, I think it's, like, easy to go with, like, this is what we have, we're going to make an album out of it, go. Like, it wasn't that, it was more of, like, when we had enough material for the album. It's, not trying to be, like, the pretentious quality over quantity. Like, it's, it was, like, these are ready, we have enough for an album, and this fits, like, perfectly within the concept of what we have been writing for the past year and a half. Then, at that point, it culminated into, like, we're ready to release the album. So it wasn't like, we made all these kind of like, grab the best ones and like, pushed out. It was I think it was more of like a, incubating until it was ready to go.
For sure.
That makes sense. Yeah. And hey, it's your process, it works for you. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing,
Fair enough.
That's awesome.
Here comes the little criminal.
Oh,
Christ.
Oh yeah. You know what you did.
He loves Uncle Mike the most.
So yeah, I guess we have some hot pot to eat. So I'll wrap this up here. We'll have to do hot takes another time because I'm really excited by the prospect of.
We'll workshop them at pod when there's no microphone, so we can say something hurtful.
I think I've only released one so far. I'm trying to think which ones are going to come out. But yeah, some people have had some wild. Oh, this one's in the queue, so it'll come out before this.
The idea of us like yelling our hot takes like as like food is spitting out of our mouths at the restaurant.
Oh yeah, by the way, the hottest, like the most controversial one I've had so far, which will come out before this, is kind of like a band like really inspired by like punk stuff. And the guy's just like, he's just like, man, the Clash just kind of sucks. And I'm like, oh man, that's hot. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to beat that, but yeah, there's another one that like deals with Kanye, which is a whole another subject matter, and yeah, so the floor is pretty much like if you can keep like racial slurs out of it, you're pretty much good. Yeah.
Wait, is that a serious question? Please, no.
He put out Graduation, and then I never heard anything else. Yeah, 3 really good albums.
Thanks for doing this with us.
Oh no, thank you guys. Like for me, it's like my time. For you, it's all 3 of your time to like sit down and do my bullshit podcast.
We're so fun.
No, like we were talking about how we were really grateful for this because submitting songs to playlist curators doesn't work for us very well. But like being able to talk about like how we came to the album and like it's more long form and it's not going to be for everyone, but we're really grateful for this opportunity.
Oh, thanks. I mean, if I'm being honest, I do all of it for the artists. It's not because I think there's going to be some like massive audience, that's going to like whatever. Like, oh wow, 50,000 people listen to the Chewy Center like, wow, look at that. Like, it's more like, first of all, I want you guys to feel validated because you should, but it's also, I want to make sure artists have a space to share the ideas that they have instead of feeling like it's a super strict, like I would hate to give you like a list of questions and be like, all right, answer the, like a, what's that called for like talk shows? It's like a pre-interview or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that would, I don't know.
I love that this was like a Johnny Carson setup and there's commercial breaks where you're just like swigging whiskey hard. Like, I'm drinking. My wife doesn't let me drink at home. I'm a grown man. I can drink.
I'm like,
and we're back.
I'm listening to the album between, like during the commercial break, like to catch up,
What's your name, Skippy? What?
But no, seriously, it was a lot of fun. I definitely want to have you guys on again. I would love to have you on. Just like my vision of this is pretty freeform. I was really excited about the album, so I wanted to focus on that. But like, man, I'd love to just like debate, like whatever, like.
Oh, let's go.
Like whether the Grateful, like whether any of the Grateful Dead's albums, like the recorded albums, even like touch the live stuff, or like why everyone hates Fish so much.
Who hates Fish?
Oh no, are we gonna stirring up shit here?
Short answer: the Grateful Dead do have some albums that work as great albums on their own.
Oh, American Beauty is like a bona fide
Shakedown Street's mine.
Oh yeah.
And then Fish is like you have to experience it. It's the douchey answer, but like it's true.
God damn.
You have to experience it.
I'll throw a hot take in there real quick. I've seen Dead & Co. Because in fairness, Jerry died when I was 1 year old.
Well,
so
Dead & Co. is a whole debate in the
that's a whole thing in and of itself. But fully enjoyed it. I think John Mayer is a great guitarist. All that, but
this really should have been the record that we launched the Wooks Are Not People merch line that we talked about. Where it's like, what if we did something really punk rock in the jam band world and we publicly turn on the Wooks?
Oh my god. You'd be having,
The Wooks have been very good to us, but I think of all the people, they would appreciate the joke the most.
That's 100%. Fair. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. But yeah, no, definitely want to do it again. I know everyone's busy, all that, but it's just like an easy hang with you guys.
We'd love to hang and talk shit anytime.
Yeah. Damn straight. Right on. So this is like the self-promotional part of this. Obviously, it's pretty easy for this one because Janet Flight came out like at time of recording, like a couple weeks ago. So like, I definitely like. I tend to steer people to Bandcamp. I don't. Do you guys do Bandcamp?
We're not cool enough for band.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, you don't do EPs. Yeah,
we're like I turned 30, and I feel like there's just a whole thing I don't know about anymore.
Hyperpop came out, and I realized I was irrelevant to the world.
Steven is fucking Hyperpop.
Yeah. I love Hyperpop.
Oh my god!
But the Janet Flight is streaming on all the major streamers. Try to listen to it like in order at least once.
Agreed.
We kind of had a vision for it. If you can't, that's okay too. But the Chewy Center on all streaming. You
guys have a website.
Yep. We're on TikTok and Instagram. We're active on all that stuff. But yeah, we're really proud of this record. Hoping that people can connect to the message of it, and we'll be playing around this summer in the Northeast Ohio area.
What the date that your release show got moved to? What was that again?
It'll be August 23rd.
Perfect.
And there's not a lot of details yet. I can say that we confirmed Among the Willows is going to open.
Really?
Yeah, we haven't done a gig with them in a few years. We did a lot of our early days with them.
Oh, they're so great.
Yeah, and they're great guys too.
One of the best guitarists in the game, John. Oh my god.
He sold me my pedal board.
No way.
Yeah, I got my Temple Audio pedal board from him.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so we're excited to have them. Hopefully we'll have one more opener on that. But August 23rd at the Winchester, we'll be playing Janet Flight in full, and then a second set of some fun stuff.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Man, I'm excited for that. And I'll give you guys credit too. Active on social media, which that's easily the thing I'm worst at as a musician, so I give you a lot of credit for.
Thank you, Haley, for your help.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm garbage at social media.
She like makes sure that like we have a schedule in mind, and she's like, "You guys need to like plan some stuff. We need this kind of thing here." And
it's important in the modern age, and
it's the last thing we want to think about.
It's the last thing any musician wants to. I don't want to sidetrack too hard, but there was that whole thing with like Halsey, sometime within like the last year or two, where she was protesting her label because they were saying they were basically going to like stop pushing her stuff if she didn't make like TikToks for promotion. And it's just like an interesting dilemma, because it's like, as the artist, you're like, I just want to create art or whatever, but as the label, it's like you exist to make money, and you realize like, oh, if Halsey went on TikTok, it could be the lowest effort thing ever, it's going to get all of this attention because she's like this huge name. And so I feel like there is this like battle at the crux of like artist versus like the realities of promotion, and a lot of us, like including myself, are just like unwilling to accept it. And it's just like, nah, the music's enough, man. And so it's cool that you guys like, none of it feels like forced or fake or anything. It just feels like you guys doing your best to like connect with people, in a very real way. Like, you're not doing fucking like TikTok dances or whatever. Like, it's
I refuse.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure I give you a lot of credit there.
Thanks,
for
man.
being willing to take on that part of like what we do.
It's hard to try to figure out like what to do on social media when you don't want to do like the trendy stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're like, how do I use this for like, how do I find like the 34, 40 something like proggy music nerd hippie people like that fans are kind of like this weird amalgamation of.
The weird 20-year-old who listens to Styx, like that was me in high school or whatever.
You're
like,
better for it.
Yeah. But seriously, thanks again, guys. And
absolutely,
I'm really excited about the album and looking forward to talking to you again sometime soon.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, man.